Welcome back to the Four Podmen, the wrestling podcast we bring you each and every week. Joining me again this week, Joe the Beef Titan. And Joe, how are we doing?
Good. I was thinking, should I do this, like the four life? Should I be doing that?
Yeah, we could do that, or we could go too sweet, or we could go whatever, I mean, whatever way we want to do it. We're not giving away the episode yet.
I'm pretty sure the title will have given it away before they clicked it. No,
probably will actually. The thumbnail will definitely have given it away without a shadow of a doubt. But yeah, we're going to take a look back at 25 years of the NWO. I don't know whether necessarily it's 25 years of the NWO, but certainly there's at least 5 to 10 without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, but it has had like the impact the NWO have had on the on wrestling is just absolutely massive. Without the NWO, you don't have the Attitude Era. You know, like where I do wonder where wrestling would be if it wasn't for the NWO, to be perfectly honest, because at that time it was getting very cartoony and very hokey and messy and very much targeted at children. Like I think WWE had Ron Simmons as a futuristic gladiator around that time, and you had Max Moon coming through, you had Mantar. You know, it was pretty shit, like, you know. And then this came along, and you know, as you said, it's not 25 full years of the NWO.
Yeah. But certainly has left its
but
impact.
It's had a massive impact. Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, bit of housekeeping. Dynamo Podcast Network on YouTube for episodes of the show. Obviously, if you want audio versions of the show, head over Podmen, Spotify, iTunes. That's where you'll find our audio version show. If you want to contact the show, the Four Podmen on Facebook and at @TPodmen on Twitter. All links will be down below in the description. If you want to contact us, comment, share your thoughts, let us know your thoughts on the NWO. Safe to say, Joe, yeah, it did. It had a huge impact. It certainly changed the face, dynamic, and landscape of wrestling without a shadow of a doubt. But yeah, it's kind of like, to this day, I sell NWO shirts. I sold NWO shirts last week, both the red and black Wolfpack and the white and black. So like, I still send NWO shirts to this day, and people still buy into it, still have fond memories of it. It was a big part of their childhood, big part of their teens, big part of their adulthood, whatever it is. Everyone talks about the NWO. I suppose where to begin? I suppose we have to begin at Bash at the Beach, do we? There's no other place really to start.
You begin at the start, mate. You know, you go from the start. Like, you start with the Outsiders, Nash and Hall, causing shit. Like that was like, you know, I wouldn't be the biggest fan of Nash and Hall as wrestlers, like, nor the third man they brought in, you know. But you can't deny the impact all three of them had over the years, not just in the NWO, but over the years, especially Nash and Hogan. You know, and they just, you know, as I said, you started with the Outsiders, which looks like a legit shoot. You know, they walk in, they step over the barrier, they kind of take over, and you know, they're on the mic talking shit. And then, as you said, we got to Bash at the Beach, and my boy Savage is taking a beating. And then there was one time rival / best mate, which, depending on the time of year, I suppose, like, comes down, and the biggest, like, surely it had to be the biggest shock ever, isn't it?
Probably in terms of wrestling and put together, yes. Probably not in terms of, say, accidents or deaths or that kind of
thing. No.
Certainly in terms of actual work in the business, yeah, without a shadow.
Yes, exactly. As far as kayfabe goes, yeah,
especially they bring him in and it's Thunder in Paradise. It's all the yellow and red. We're led along this path of believing what we're going to get. It's Hulkamania, it's Hulk Hogan, it's all good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the real American coming to save the day, man. Yeah. And drops that big leg.
Unbelievable.
No, it was pretty. Like, you could tell by the reaction of the crowd how amazing it was, because they went fucking bananas. They nearly tore the place apart. You know, it was fantastic.
This was what we call as real as it gets. Mean Gene in the middle of it, trying to dodge cans and bottles and beer cans and everything else. Hogan is standing in the middle of the ring, delivering the promo, which is probably the one of the most outstanding promos in wrestling history. Um, doesn't dodge anything. Stuff hopping off him, doesn't flinch, not a bit.
Yeah, but I think now when you're that size, like the only thing that's going to put you off really is if a truck hits you. So all that little flotsam and jetsam that was coming at him, he didn't give a shit. Like,
and I'm sure for him as well, as much of a veteran as he was even at that stage, he must have had to focus greatly on delivering those lines because this is him turning heel. You know what I mean? This is if you can imagine, what would you compare it to? John Cena turning heel?
Unfortunately, he never did.
Yeah.
Would have been amazing if he had, just look at what it did for Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
And never mind Roman Reigns. Look what it did for Hogan. Hogan's popularity was waning. He was becoming a footnote in the world of professional wrestling. People were sick of the red and yellow.
Yeah.
And they were moving on. And then all of a sudden he does this, becomes the most relevant human being in wrestling again.
Well, it would have been very difficult to continue on with the say your prayers and eat your vitamins, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, especially after the steroid trial.
Light up the background, yeah. So, he did definitely need to find some sort of new stick to go with, you know what I mean? The delivery of the promo with Gene Okerlund and Mean Gene was incredible as well, insofar as his astonishment at it, and I can't believe you did this. You've sold us all out. Like, Mean Gene was as responsible for it as Hogan was, really, in terms of its magnitude. And Hogan talking about the trash, taking out the trash and all this kind of thing. And his lines were just incredible at
it, I think maybe not before he started the promo, but I'm sure during it he realized what a moment this was.
Yeah.
Because as I said, the way the crowd reacted, he must have thought to himself, this is it. Like, as you said, wrestling was real again. It was absolutely magnificent. And he knew he had to deliver each line and each word perfectly, because this is the kind of thing that's going to be replayed 25 years later.
100 years later.
Pardon?
100 years later.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But when I went back and looked at it today, I looked at Hall and Nash. And if you look at Hall and Nash at it, they really look like, something. We fucking have them again. We have them again. Here we go. You know what I mean? And it was just Hogan just delivering those lines, and Mean Gene and all, and the turn, and just how intense he was at delivering the lines, and his facials, and the hate in his face that he was delivering. Now, this is a guy who was a poster guy for kids. He was on every kid's bedroom wall. Hulkamania, the red and the yellow. You know what I mean? All of a sudden,
I think, as I said, I think once that crowd reaction they got, they knew exactly that, as I was saying, like, wrestling was real again. They had the world eaten out of the palm of their hands, and and it was just, and it still gives you goosebumps now looking back on it. It was so well executed. As you said, no one ever saw it coming. The red and yellow was coming down to save the day, and I just put a massive smile on my face thinking about it.
And especially with the history as well of who was standing on the other side of the ring.
Exactly.
So no one's seen it coming. You know what I mean? I loved his lines in the promo as well, where he turns about when he talks about the company up north, and he talks about how he made a lot of money in the company up north, but he also made a lot of people up north very, very rich as well, which I thought was brilliant. You know what I mean? I just thought his execution of those things was fantastic. But yeah,
now the blurring of the lines is a real thing with those guys. And it's a staple of wrestling even today, where they talk about rival companies and all this kind of crap. And I'm sure it was done on smaller scales before that, but that was a real kind of massive.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was your thinking back then? I mean, the NWO, it's, we get Hollywood Hogan comes out, the red and yellow is put away in the wardrobe. We get the black and white, the beard, you know, the coloring, even the logo, you know what I mean? The logo just, you know, was just real rugged and rough and stuff like that. And like these guys were going through WCW, they were rinsing the cash. You know what I mean? They had taken over. You know, what was you thinking back then with NWO and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, no, back then I didn't get WCW as a kid. We only had WWE because it was on, I think it was on Sky One or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah,
And but even even then, as a kid, no internet, not getting WCW, like I still knew who the NWO were. You know, they were
yeah,
just. It was such an earthquake in the world of professional wrestling, and not just that, you saw NWO shirts all over the place.
yeah.
You know, and as I said, like, and I knew who it was, even though I didn't know what it was really. You know, but I know I was there. Oh, isn't that WCW crowd with Hogan and Diesel and Razor
Yeah,
Ramon?
yeah.
You know,
The upstarts, the
yeah,
upstarts.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. From a company that I knew was big, but couldn't watch here in Ireland.
Yeah,
It's only really, since I started looking back at this kind of stuff, and you start watching documentaries and all this kind of crap, that you realize what a huge impact it was. And so as I said, even at the time, but like, what age was I then? Jesus, I was only a young teenager, and yes, I still knew who the NWO were without ever seeing them. And
absolutely.
as you said about the Hogan's, the way he changed, like it's only like he didn't change much about it. He still wore pants, the boots, and a weights belt.
Yeah,
It's just all he did was throw on a pair of gloves and grew his beard out of it.
yeah,
Yeah, but it still looked fucking amazing.
yeah,
And
yeah,
sorry, he was still wearing a bandana too.
yeah,
It's just the color palette changed, and I said grew out his beard a small bit. That's about all he did. But
absolutely.
but his attitude was completely and utterly different, and it
Yeah,
was absolutely amazing.
yeah. And it was mad the way I always remember the way they presented themselves. Like they always had that kind of like an inside jibe, if you like, or something like that. That their goal was, you know, they talk about billionaire Ted, and their job was to take all the money and take over WCW basically. And look, they weren't far from it. In fairness, you know what I mean. In most respects, you know. But it
And
was,
there was a
yeah. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, go on. Go
No,
ahead.
and no, it's just there was a time like the NWO was bigger than WCW for quite a while, I'd say. Like, you know what I mean? It was That's all anyone talked about. It wasn't WCW wasn't really mentioned. It was all just NWO stuff. So didn't they even have a video game, NWO WCW on it?
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? And they had a pay per view as well that was
yeah,
meant to be an NWO pay
yeah,
per view and everything.
yeah.
It was just huge. It was absolutely monumental.
Yeah, if you were an outsider looking in, you would nearly think NWO was its own promotion that has sort of syndicated itself a little bit to WCW, really. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
absolutely. You're perfectly right. As you said, it seemed like a separate entity
Yeah.
there. It was absolutely massive.
I often wonder, I pinch myself, because obviously I sell the merchandise and I have to shop and stuff like that. I often wonder how many NWO shirts have been sold since that day worldwide. It's just because everyone had an NWO shirt. It was the coolest thing in the world, you know?
Yeah, like I'd say the only thing to come close to rivaling it would be Austin 316, and I'm not even sure if that even comes close to it because, like as you said, like you still see the odd NWO shirt around.
Yeah,
Like I was in the gym there last year, and because of lockdowns, I haven't been able to go as often. But like, I was there last year, and there was a guy walking out of the changing room in an NWO shirt. Of course, I had to say cool shirts. Like I had to mention them, But like you still see them around. It's just amazing.
so when you said cool shirt to them, did he go back to the locker room, get the belt, and come out with the belt like a guitar as well? No, or did he just have the
No,
shirt?
unfortunately not. But we did stand and chat for about 10, 15 minutes about pro wrestling. So
Awesome.
that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And those interactions are always cool as well because they're not planned, so it's kind of really cool. Like, the painting of the belt. Um,
the spray painting.
yeah, the NWO
Yeah,
on it.
that's pretty damn iconic.
Yeah,
And it was just the NWO attitude all over.
yeah,
It really was, like, to spray paint belts and carry it around for a while. Like,
yeah,
And didn't they spray paint a couple of people's backs as well?
Oh yeah, they used to spray paint the backs and everything. And
Yeah.
Brutus Beefcake was on the end of a hiding or two at that time as well.
Yeah.
Hogan was really clearing out his list of all his old friends at that time, and the shock on Brutus Beefcake's face and some of that. But I always thought back, like, I mean, this was them taking it to another level, you know what I mean? When you think about the iconic, the big gold belt, and these guys just taking a spray can to an NWO and just presenting it, going, we'll do whatever we want. We don't care about history, legacy, people who've brought us to the dance or been on the way to the dance. We'll do whatever we want. We're the NWO. And I think because of that, I think that's why fans got so excited about it. Because not only did we see a lot of wrestlers going into the NWO, as you know, it got watered down and saturated. And at one stage, there's pictures of the NWO in the ring, and it looks like the makings of a pretty good 20-man battle royal, you know. But the fans again wanted to be so much a part of it as well, and they bought into it and stuff like that.
And the thing is, like, if I was the age I am now, back then, watching these guys spray paint the big gold, I would have been furious, and like if someone did it today, I'd be fucking furious. But as I said, it just fit perfectly with what they were trying to achieve. It really did. Like, you would have had the kind of younger crowd probably would have thought that was, really cool and brilliant. Whereas, the kind of more mature, shall I say, rather than older, more mature wrestling fan would have been fucking furious. Like, how dare you disrespect the big gold by spray painting, you scumbag. But that's exactly the reaction they were looking for. They were looking for people to go, Jesus Christ, how could you do such a thing,
Fucking blasphemy, like, you know what I mean? What the
hell
are
absolutely.
You doing? You realise the people who have held this belt and the people who have gone before you, and these were kind of like, we don't give a shit, we're getting truckloads of cash, this is now our company, we'll do whatever the hell we want. And they were just branding everything. Everywhere you went, it was NWO. Even lads doing promos back in the day, they'd be at a wall and there'd be some sort of NWO or something on the back where they had got to it or something like that, It's just crazy. And then they did the ads. Remember those black and white kind of ads where this segment is paid for by the NWO and all that kind of stuff. So as you alluded to, the show became NWO really, not WCW when you think about it, Well, what was it? I mean, your memories, obviously. I mean, I remember the vicious attack on Rey Mysterio where they literally nearly put him through a wall like a missile. And I just remember, I think it was Nash who had him up, and he just looked like it was like Nash was holding a bazooka. He just put him straight through the wall. Like Mysterio hit the deck, and I went, "Oh, he's dead." There's no doubt about it. He is dead. The beatdown they gave that guy. But I also remember they had a plan, to bring, I think, DiBiase in, and DiBiase was going to be the financial advisor guy. And they sort of canned that. It didn't happen. And Bischoff seen an opportunity to become a proper on-screen guy. And this is where Bischoff slides into the NWO as well. So he was obviously recognizing at the time as well, this is actually the NWO show. It's not really WCW anymore. So I better jump on board because I'm either with them or I'm against them. And I'd rather be with them. But I think most guys at the time as well, wrestling, they also looked at it and they go, this is where 90% of the budget is going, so I need to be a part of that. You guys just stick with that 10%. But they brought in kind of anyone and everyone, didn't they, really, when you think about it? I mean,
as you said, but as you said, they were the money guys, didn't they have their own creative control? I think Nash was a booker at one stage for them, so it was, everyone knew if you wanted to make money, you had to be in or around the NWO. Like either had to be you had to be fighting against them, or as part of it, and that's what people were doing. Like they were, as you said, like Bischoff saw an opportunity to become an on-screen character and jumped at it. I do wonder, would it have been any different if DiBiase had done it? And I don't know if it would have been. I think it would have been just kind of gone along the same kind of lines, I think. What do you think?
No, I think the problem, I suppose, if DiBiase had got in there, we wouldn't have got the Eric Bischoff that we got. It was kind of critical to it as well, if you like, because he was always seen as the go-to guy between the NWO and Ted Turner. and that's the kind of way it was laid out. I think with DiBiase, I think he would have took on the role and it still would have been successful, but I think it would have looked a different way. I don't think DiBiase, because of his history and stuff like that, would have been able to go to where Bischoff went to, which was, proper down and dirty, if you like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, just I think that's a really good point, because I don't know if DiBiase would have taken the chances that Bischoff did. Yeah. I think he would have been a bit more of a traditionalist and might have been against some of the stuff that they wanted to do. Yeah. And I think that's a really good point you make there. I also wonder, what would we have had Mr. McMahon if Bischoff hadn't done that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think with DiBiase, you still would have got the same effect.
That was really the catalyst for.
Yeah, I think with DiBiase, you would have got the same sort of level of wealth and smugness. But I think with Bischoff, he always painted the picture that it was dirty money, if you like. It wasn't like given money, if you like. You know what I mean? It was like, we kind of got this, and we have this deal, and we're going to do this for positions. It was like a filthy financial chess game, if you like. And that's what I really liked about the dynamic of Bischoff. I suppose before we go into the stuff, I mean, we do have to mention some of the. We've mentioned the good and the impact we kind of had on WWF. We'll come back to that, but I suppose we have to mention some of the bad as well, because these guys, I think, although they started out really well and they had a plan and it lit a fire and the fans and all were crazy, I think they began to believe their own hype as well, and it got a little bit stupid and a little bit lax. I think they relaxed in their own newfound position, if you like. And we got things like that Four Horsemen parody. Although at times there was a little bit of entertainment in it, but I just think it just went that little bit too far. I thought the Arn Anderson stuff, and I just thought it was a bit too much, if you like.
I think they got to the point, like you'd sorry, I shouldn't say 3 years. I should say you had plenty of big egos involved, and they probably got to the point where they just thought that their shit didn't stink. You know what I mean? They were just so big. The NWO was so big, so successful that it didn't matter what they did, it was going to be brilliant. And they didn't think. I think a lot of stuff they didn't think through, and tried to figure out just how will this land? Just fucking do whatever we want. We're amazing. This is amazing. Just do everything we want. Let's go nuts. And and I think they felt that it was too big to fail as well at one stage. I'm pretty sure that's another thing they felt like.
Yeah, I think they were riding that wave so high that they obviously thought, look, we could do anything here. They don't care. They're going to pop for it, but no, they aren't. And I remember two things that always stick out to me, apart from the Horseman parody thing. At the sold out event, the three of them came in on the back of garbage trucks, and I was thinking, this is terrible. This is like who came up with this, and how was this a good idea, and how did you three guys agree to this? You know what I mean? It was just, whatever about some sort of an underlining thing there of taking out the trash. If you're at that level, you want to take out the trash, but you don't necessarily want to be the bin man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean? You don't. Like the symbolism could easily get mixed up. That instead of taking it out, you are it.
Because I was when I re-looked at it, I was thinking at the time where Bischoff and they took out the trash, and I remember Vince getting someone else to take Bischoff out. I think it was Cena or something like that, or dumped him into the dumpster and took him away. But it wouldn't have felt the same if it had been Vince doing it. It was Vince directing it, so there was levels. And that's what I was thinking about it. That's
that degree of separation between yourself and the trash itself. You know what I mean? Makes sense.
Absolutely. I suppose we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about one of the greatest finishers ever that the NWO came up with, the finger poke of doom.
You did mention that we had to talk about the bad as well.
Of course.
That's got to be near the top of the list, if not at the top. It's certainly in the discussion, because that was fucking dreadful. But that was another thing, where did they really think about how it would look and how it would come across, or was it another case of them just going, yeah, look, we're amazing. This is amazing. Our egos, we're riding the crest of a wave, and we can get away with this kind of bullshit.
Yeah. I suppose the analogy is that they said that they didn't have the sounding board of a Vince McMahon to push stuff off to say what you think, or he could filter out some of that. You know what I mean? I just at that time anyway, I can't imagine a finger poke of doom happening in WWE. Vince would have never let that fly at all. But potentially these days he might let it fly a little bit, but certainly not back then. It was just like I don't know. It was kind of like that was kind of a time as well where fans were looking down. Yeah, this whole NWO thing, you know.
I think that's when I think that was the kind of I don't know if it was properly the beginning of the end, but I think people were starting to see through a lot of the bullshit and kind of realizing not everything these guys do is good, and we need to scrutinize everything they say and do a little bit more than we have previously, because that was fucking nonsense. You know, and I had such a big smile on my face talking about them being formed and all that. Now I'm just like, what a swing in moods, like, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose before we talk about them going into WWE and coming in, I mean, like we need to touch on the invasion, which was an absolute disaster. You know, unfortunately, they decided to do this WCW invasion thing, which was just a cluster when you think about it. But it was kind of weird because when you think of WCW, you think of the NWO, you think of Sting, you think of all these big things. And obviously these guys were tied into guaranteed contracts with, I think it was Time Warner at the time. Was
AOL Time Warner.
AOL Time Warner, yeah. So they were guaranteeing the contracts. And Vince, obviously at the time for the takeover, didn't obviously do his full due diligence in terms of who he had and who he didn't and who he was taking over. So he didn't end up with the NWO. Obviously didn't end up with Sting until years later, but didn't end up with the NWO until nearly a year later, where they had kind of missed the boat, and the failing of the invasion thing was clear for everyone to see. And it was kind of like, how do you do a WCW invasion if you don't have the NWO? Considering the impact they had on the business, even though some of the stuff was getting a bit crazy, but also the impact they had on WWE at the time, as you said, with Degeneration X and the Attitude Era and all that kind of stuff, and how edgy wrestling had got and had moved away from the kiddish stuff, if you like. It had gotten to be a very serious business between two companies that were fighting for survival in reality, not in the world of wrestling. And I just think it was an interesting, you know, sort of conundrum to face. But then they come in, and it's kind of like you didn't use them in the invasion angle. Then they come in, and kind of no one really cared, because of the disappointment of the invasion. It was very hard to kind of try and recoup that sort of fan base back, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, the momentum was gone at that stage. You know what I mean? But if they were part of the invasion, can you imagine? You know, if the likes of them and Goldberg and Sting had been there, you wouldn't have needed the way they shoehorned Austin, the way they shoehorned Austin and Angle and a few others, you know, and the McMahon should have fucking stayed. And then what was it? Shane and Stephanie were part of it. You know, it was just, what the fuck were they playing at? You know, it's just like, I can't understand, like, McMahon, how he didn't just go, look, if I only get the NWO out of all these contracts, because who was it? It was the NWO, the three lads for the NWO, Goldberg, Sting, DDP. I know DDP gave his up to come back. I think was there anyone else? Not that I can think of anyway. But like,
I mean, that's the guts of it. I mean, you'd buff Bagwell and stuff like that as well, but that was the guts of it, really. You know.
Yeah,
I mean?
But like, if he just paid out for the three NWO lads, he wouldn't have. You know, he would have got away with not having Sting and Goldberg, say, right? Even though, once again, as you said, synonymous with WCW. When you think of WCW, you think of the NWO, Goldberg, Sting, right there. When he's on the NWO and got those three guys in, he would have like quadrupled the money he spent on them. Actually, he would have more than that. He would have made 10 times more than what he spent on. And as I said, they wouldn't have had to shoehorn, you know, two McMahons and Austin and Angle and stuff like that. They just would have been able to have a proper fucking invasion. And of course, like I don't know where his head was like when he didn't pay out that money, because that was madness. As I said, he would have made it back tenfold easily, if not more.
I was thinking,
Crazy.
imagine the dynamic of the show back then. If you had a full blown feud, NWO representing WCW and DX, so representing WWE, and just imagine the TV time on that and stuff like that. Would have been
No, it would have sold gangbusters, man. It would have been fucking massive, and it was such a wasted opportunity. And then, as you said, a year later, he brings them in, and no one, as you said, no one cared. It was just like, oh, where were these guys a year ago when we would have gone fucking bananas for them?
Yeah, it's a year late and you fucked us out. Good luck.
It was I don't know where his head was at. Like.
Yeah, it's very, very strange. But then I suppose we move on a number of years later, and one that always, bugs me to hell, that WrestleMania with Sting and Triple H. And I just, you know what I mean? It's just, if there was ever something that puts a nail in a coffin and it shows kind of the bitterness of McMahon still, and, the inability of Hall and Nash, I just remember thinking back at it and I was thinking, this is such a spectacle of a WrestleMania. Massive crowd, huge entrance. Remember the entrance? Remember the stage, the entrance when they walked in, when Sting walked in and everything and all. I remember when they were booking this and the build up to it and stuff like that and all, and I was just thinking, this ain't gonna go well. This ain't gonna go well at all. And I remember when the match broke down, and the next thing, Hall and Nash are coming down the ramp. And I don't think they've ever walked down a longer ramp, because it took them about 5 minutes to get to the ring. And when they got there, they couldn't move. And the whole thing was just horrible, wasn't it? Really, like, I mean, I've gone to a few WrestleManias, but if I had been to that one, I would have been, oh god, really.
But like the other side of it, down Isle, is like it was like someone backstage knew nothing about WCW, the history of WCW, like that they came out to help Sting. Like, what the fuck? Like, myself and Ian talk about this all the time, about like how frustrating that was. Like, it's just like the NWO coming out to help Sting. What the fuck? Like, it was so fun. Like, Ian spent his entire time fighting them. Yes, they came out, they somehow expected us to believe that those guys were going to come out and help them. It was just fucking nonsense. It was that's WWE's version of the finger poke of doom with NWO. It was just nonsensical. Made absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, as you said, to add insult to injury, you had a fella with bad knees, another fella that had addiction problems, and they're trying to shimmy their way down this stupidly long ramp. It was a disaster. It was an absolute disaster.
The history of smashing toys off aprons and everything and all, like, in the business, like, it was crazy. I suppose we have to mention Hogan, obviously, in the black and white and stuff like that, and we'd finish on a high note. Maybe we talk about 18 against Rock. It's an incredible moment, really, when you think about an incredible match in terms of psychology, in terms of including the crowd. Rock's star shone, if you like. Hogan still huge in the business. You could see it, that the crowd were just all in on this match. But yeah, an interesting dynamic.
Oh, absolutely, man. These are the kind of dream matches that we all talk about. You know what I mean? And I'm sure if this match hadn't happened, it would make many a WrestleMania dream card. And yes, it did. It did happen, and it was fucking spectacular. And not that they did it. Not that that was magnificent and blew us away, but gee, it was just the atmosphere and how charismatic and literally. I know I'm saying his own word here, but it was literally electrifying. It really was. The crowd were going bananas, and you couldn't help but get dragged into the whole emotion behind it. You know, when people talk about in other sports, they look like who would win between Tyson and Ali or something in boxing. You know, that's one of the beauties of pro wrestling, that potentially you can get these matches. You know, and we got it that night, and it was absolutely fantastic to see. And as I said, just you couldn't help but be dragged into the middle of it because of the two men that were there, and two men that know exactly how to work a crowd too. And they were working them that night. They really were.
Absolutely. It was amazing as well. I always remember watching it, and the crowd, as you said, were so intense and so on it, like that. Even watching it at home, you felt very much part of the crowd. You were on top of it, like. And I just remember when the two of them were in the ring staring at each other back and forth, and the heads moving and stuff like that. And I just remember behind them, the crowd going, "Whoa," crowd. At one stage, you nearly thought the whole crowd was going to jump the barrier and bum rush the ring or something like that. But it was incredible. And then of course, Hogan with the belt and the Hollywood belt, and he's doing his thing with it. Then of course Rock does his thing, and then he's bringing Hogan back in, and everything else that went with it was just incredible. So I said we'd have to finish on a high note in relation to this stuff. You know what I mean? We couldn't
Oh
finish.
because it was when it was good, it was so good. It really was. Now when it was bad, it happened to be complete and utter muck. But when it was good, it really was fantastic. And like even when you look back on that match now, or even that Bash at the Beach where it all started, like they're because of how the crowd react, you still get a bit of a reaction yourself. But I find I still have a bit of a guttural reaction to what's going on screen, even though I've seen both of them 100 times. But you just get caught up in it still. I find anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing as well, isn't it, when you think about it? Because you look at Hogan with the red and the yellow, and you look at him with obviously the black and the white, and at times he gets an awful lot of stick in the business and stuff like that and all. But he's been such a huge part of it, like, you know what I mean? And like, I mean, if you go back through wrestling history and you were to take out the Hogan stuff, you know what I mean? The way people sometimes think, you know what I mean? You'd have such a void. I mean, would we be still looking at this day? Would we be still looking at the ring sitting in the middle of the carnival with the candy floss and the popcorn?
Yeah, like would Mania exist? Would WrestleMania exist without it? Like you look at the Andre Slam, one of the big iconic moments.
But WCW being the force that it became.
Yeah, exactly. Larger than life. Thunder Lips himself, old Thunder Lips. What would wrestling be without the man? And as I said, the NWO really saved wrestling because God knows where it was heading at the time. Right? Like it seemed to be, like when you look back at the time, it seemed to be going down the toilet. Like, as I said, WWE had a former WCW champion in Ron Simmons, and they gave him a dog shit gimmick of some futuristic gladiator or some crap. What the hell were they thinking? You get Ron Simmons and you do that with him. So like, the NWO was to kick up the arse that the business really needed, I think, at the time.
And just for our viewers out there, so you know, of course, our friends over at Peacock are trying to lead us to believe that none of this stuff ever happened. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, how do you cherry pick and pick and choose? I mean, if you're talking about sanitizing the business, where'd you go with the NWO? You know what I mean? It's like never happened.
And also to our listeners / viewers, we have a show on that. Go back and watch
it. Yeah, absolutely.
What we think of what Peacock are doing.
Yeah. The advisory will be at the moment: do not sell your DVDs or VHS tapes, whatever you do. Hang on to them because they're going to be worth their weight in gold in about 3 years without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. But listen, Joe, this has been an absolute pleasure going back talking about the NWO and some of the milestones and the high level stuff. I mean, from sailing in in the red and the yellow, to sailing out in the black and the white, and bringing the wave of everyone with them. It's been an absolute pleasure. Dynamo Podcast Network for all our video episodes. Audio versions are available through Podmen, Spotify, iTunes, all that kind of good audio stuff. Let us know your thoughts on the NWO. Were you an NWO fan? or were you just purely on the DX side of things and stuff like that? Were you sold on WCW? Let us know in the comments. Obviously, hit us up on Twitter. Let us know at Podmen, or you can hit us up on Facebook when the episode drops as well. Let us know your thoughts on the NWO. Certainly an era and a faction that absolutely changed the fabric and landscape of wrestling. Joe, until next time. Cheers, my friend.
Take care, buddy.